Welcome. Today we're really digging into the long, and let's face it, incredibly complex history of Germany. We want to explore those key forces, the big moments that shaped the country we see today.
Exactly. And our aim isn't just to list facts, but to, pull out the essential insights, trace those key periods and developments, and really understand the connections that still resonate now.
Yeah, because Germany's story, it's got these recurring themes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fragmentation, the struggle for unity, being right there in the middle of Europe.
And these huge transformations, often coming out of conflict, but also showing incredible resilience. So yeah, let's trace those threads right from the start.
Okay, way back then, we're talking, what, the very earliest human presence? There are Neanderthal remains?
Oh yeah, going back over 130,000 years. And then Homo sapiens are definitely in the region by about 40,000 BCE. We have things like those amazing Vogelherd cave figurines.
Incredible. And then farming starts much later.
Right. Around 5500 BCE, you get the linear pottery culture spreading agriculture. It's a slow build over millennia.
So jumping forward quite a bit, late Bronze Age, Iron Age. We start seeing distinct groups.
Definitely. You've got Celtic peoples quite prominent in the south and west. And then starting around 750 BCE, Germanic tribes expanding down from Scandinavia and northern Germany.
And how do we know about these early Germanic tribes? Mostly from outsiders, right? Like Romans.
Yeah, largely.
Yeah.
Roman writers, especially Tacitus with his Germania around 98 CE, give us a lot of detail. I mean, it's a Roman perspective, but still.
He talks about different tribes. Cherushi, Suebi.
That's right, diverse groups. He describes their farming, their kinship structures, these assemblies they called the thing for making decisions.
And temporary war leaders, not permanent kings necessarily.
Often, yes. And rich oral traditions, myths with gods like Woden Odin and Donar Thor, these fed into later epics, like the Nibelungenlied.
And what about Rome itself? The interaction there was huge, wasn't it?
Absolutely critical. That Rhine-Danube frontier wasn't just a border, it was a zone of intense exchange. Germanic people served in the Roman army, they adopted Roman tech.
But Rome never fully conquered Germania Magna, the lands east of the Rhine.
No, they tried, but the landscape was tough. Forests, swamps, and the resistance was fierce.
Which leads to that really pivotal moment, Teutoburg Forest.
Ah, yes. 9 CE. Arminius leads this coalition, wipes out 3 Roman legions. It was a massive shock to Rome.
And the result?
It basically solidified the Rhine and Danube, the Limes Germanicus, as the frontier. It created this long-lasting cultural divide, you could say, between the Romanized West and the free Germanic East.
And that eastern area, it develops its own distinct identities.
Exactly. You start seeing the precursors to those later stem duchies, Saxony, Bavaria, Swabia, Franconia. These regional identities are forming early.
And all this kind of sets the scene for the next big upheaval, the migration period, the Völkerwanderung.
Precisely. Starting around the 4th century, often pushed by groups like the Huns moving in from the east.
So massive movements of Germanic peoples heading west, crossing into the Roman Empire.
Right. And while many groups moved out of Germania, the pressure and shifts within the region also, maybe paradoxically, helped shape some kind of shared identity among those who stayed. It's complex, but vital for understanding how the Holy Roman Empire eventually emerges.
Okay, so let's move into the Middle Ages. The old Carolingian Empire, Charlemagne's empire, has fragmented. We're looking at East Francia now, which covers those stem duchies we mentioned.
And this is where the Ottonian dynasty steps up. Starts with Henry the Fowler, around 919. He's the first non-Frankish king to sort of loosely unite these duchies. Not a strong central state, but a start.
But his son, Otto the Great, he had bigger ambitions, didn't he? King from 936.
Oh, definitely. Sources suggest he saw himself as Charlemagne's successor. He really tried to build something more lasting, more centralized.
How did he do that? It must have been tough for those powerful regional dukes.
It was. A key strategy was using the church. He asserted his right to appoint bishops and abbots, gave them huge tracts of land, made them powerful figures loyal to him.
So creating these princes of the empire, the Reichsfürsten, directly tied to the crown.
Exactly. It was a way to counterbalance the power of the secular dukes. He also secured the borders, big victory against the Magyars at Lechfeld in 955, pushed back the Slavs too.
But the really defining thing for Otto was Italy, right?
Absolutely. He intervened there, married Queen Adelaide, got himself crowned King of Italy in 961, and then the big one, Pope John XII crowned him emperor in Rome, 962.
And that's the moment, the start of the Holy Roman Empire.
It's generally seen that way. It fundamentally links German kingship, Italy, and the papacy. Later on, they even added Nationis Germanicae of the German nation to the title, acknowledging its core.
So this church-state relationship, established by Otto, becomes a central theme.
Hugely important, and often very contentious, because these bishops and archbishops, like in Cologne, Trier, Mainz, weren't just religious figures. They were powerful secular rulers, too, princes of the church.
And the emperors wanted to control who got those powerful positions.
Right. This lay investiture secular rulers appointing church officials led directly to the massive conflict known as the investiture controversy.
That's Pope Gregory VII versus Emperor Henry V, the whole Canossa incident in 1077.
That's the one, Henry humbling himself in the snow. Eventually, they reached a compromise, the Concordat of Worms, in 1122.
But what was the impact of that whole struggle?
Well, the church gained more independence, which was the goal of the reformers. But crucially for Germany, it weakened the emperor's central authority. And it really empowered the German princes who had taken sides in the conflict, the Welfs supporting the Pope, the Ghibellines supporting the emperor.
So this contributes to that fragmentation we talked about, the lack of a strong central power compared to, say, France or England.
Absolutely. It's a core reason the HRE remains so decentralized. The power struggle between the center and the regions, including the powerful church states, was constant.
You see this trend continue. Emperors relying more on their own family lands.
Yes, their Hausmacht. From Rudolf Rahn and onwards, emperors focused more on building up their own hereditary territories because controlling the vast, scattered imperial lands was just too difficult.
And there was even a formal recognition of the prince's power.
Right, the Statutum in Favorum Principum in 1232. It formally called the dukes domini terrae, owners of their lands. That really cemented the power shift to the regions. It's a key moment laying the groundwork for centuries of German particularism.
So fragmentation is just baked into the system. But it wasn't all politics, right? There was cultural life, too.
Oh, absolutely. Royal courts were centers, sure, but monasteries were incredibly important, preserving knowledge. Running schools alongside the cathedral schools, education was growing.
And universities started appearing.
From the 14th century, yeah. Heidelberg, Leipzig, you had influential thinkers, mystics like Hildegard von Bingen, Meister Eckhart. Literature flourished, the Minnesang, courtly romances.
And the German language itself developing.
Continuously. And then, boom, Gutenberg in Mainz, around 1440, the printing press.
Not just an invention, a revolution.
Totally. A revolution in communication. Suddenly, information, ideas could spread like never before. Literacy increases. It changes everything.
And we should also mention the Hanseatic League, shouldn't we? That economic powerhouse in the north.
Good point. From the 12th to 15th centuries, this League of Cities, Lübeck, Hamburg, Cologne, Bremen, dominated trade in the Baltic and North Seas. Huge economic clout, largely independent of the emperor, shows that regional power wasn't just political.
Okay, so we have this fragmented empire, strong regional players, and now a technology that can spread ideas rapidly. Sounds like a recipe for change.
Exactly. Which brings us to the early modern period, and arguably the biggest change of all, the Protestant Reformation.
Martin Luther, a fundamental challenge to the Catholic Church's authority.
The first successful major break, yeah. He gets outlawed at the Diet of Worms in 1521, but his ideas...
spread like wildfire thanks to that printing press.
Precisely. Pamphlets, writings, everyone could read them. And while he was in hiding, Luther translates the Bible into German, a hugely important text for the development of the modern German language itself.
And the result is a split, a separate Lutheran church.
Yes, formalized with the Augsburg Confession in 1530. So now you have deep religious division cutting right across the Holy Roman Empire. States like Saxony align with Luther. Others like Bavaria remain Catholic. Imperial unity, forget it.
And this division eventually leads to war.
Tragically, yes. The Peace of Augsburg in 1555 tried to manage it, but it didn't include Calvinism, which was spreading. Plus, Emperor Ferdinand II wanted Catholic unity back, and outside powers like France saw a chance to weaken the Habsburgs. It was a powder keg.
Ignited by the Bohemian Revolt in 1618.
Right, and that kicks off the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. Starts as an internal HRE conflict, but spirals into this massive European war fought mostly on German soil.
And the devastation was immense.
Horrific. Sources talk about a third, maybe even half the population wiped out in some areas. Fighting, famine, disease. Just catastrophic, a real collective trauma for generations.
So the Peace of Westphalia in 1648 ends it. But what are the long-term consequences?
Well, it effectively finished the Holy Roman Empire as a meaningful political entity. It massively increased the autonomy of the individual states, all the little Germanies. The emperor's power was drastically limited.
It cemented the religious divide, Protestant-Catholic.
And recognized Calvinism too, finally. It led to territorial changes. Brandenburg, Prussia gained territory, so did Sweden and France. And it confirmed Dutch independence.
So Westphalia really locks in that fragmented structure and empowers the regional states.
Absolutely. And it directly sets the stage for the rise of certain powerful states within the HRE's shell, particularly Brandenburg, Prussia. Rulers like Frederick William start consolidating their lands, building up their military and bureaucracy, becoming a major European power in their own right.
Okay, so fragmentation continues, but with some states getting much stronger. Let's jump to the 19th century. Napoleon comes along.
And sweeps away the Holy Roman Empire entirely in 1806. It's gone. Disruptive, obviously, but weirdly, it also maybe fostered a sense of shared Germanness, even without a state.
Then the Congress of Vienna in 1815 sets up the German Confederation. Looser, dominated by Austria, but Prussia keeps growing its influence and territory.
Right, and those Napoleonic Wars also really fueled German nationalism. This idea of wanting a unified German nation-state starts bubbling up events like the Wartburg Festival. But the conservative powers, led by Austria's Metternich, pushed back hard.
Meanwhile, society's changing fast. Industrialization.
Big time. People moving to cities, factories springing up, new social problems, but also economic integration. The Zollverein, that customs union from 1834, was crucial, creating a unified market. Railways connecting everything.
And Prussia's getting stronger and stronger. Enter Bismarck.
Otto von Bismarck, yeah. He becomes the key figure. He's determined to unify Germany, but under Prussian leadership, not Austrian, that whole German question.
So he uses diplomacy, but also war. Against Denmark, then Austria.
Exactly. Calculated moves. The final piece was the Franco-Prussian War, 1870-71. Prussia wins decisively.
And that leads directly to the proclamation of the German Empire in 1871.
Yep. In the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, no less. A new, unified German state, a superstate, as some sources call it, big, powerful, resource-rich.
But what kind of state was it? Unified, but how democratic?
Well, it was a federal empire dominated by Prussia. There was an elected Reichstag with universal male suffrage, but its powers were pretty limited. Real power lay with the emperor, the Kaiser, and the Chancellor Bismarck until 1890, who answered only to the Kaiser. So, yeah, less than fully democratic is a fair description.
But it was a period of growth, economically, culturally.
Oh, massively. Germany becomes a huge industrial power, rivals Britain in many sectors by 1900. Think chemicals, pharmaceuticals. There's relative peace, prosperity, lots of cultural achievement.
And Bismarck's policies inside Germany.
Kind of a mix. He cracked down on socialists and Catholics, the Kulturkampf, but also introduced pioneering social welfare laws, health insurance, pensions, trying to win over the working class, maybe?
And on the world stage, Weltpolitik.
Right. After Bismarck, especially under Kaiser Wilhelm II, Germany wanted global influence to match its economic muscle. This led to competition, friction, especially with Britain.
The naval arms race. Building dreadnoughts.
That was a big part of it. Admiral Tirpitz's naval program, starting 1898, a direct challenge to the Royal Navy. Germany didn't ultimately win that race, but the rivalry definitely heated things up. By 1913, Germany was the world's top exporter.
And this powerful, ambitious, but maybe unstable empire ultimately collapses.
In World War I, the war and the revolution at home in 1918, sailors mutinying, the Republic declared, the Kaiser abdicating bring the German Empire to an end.
Which leads us into the Weimar Republic, 1918 to 1933. Germany's first real shot at democracy.
Yeah, born out of defeat, sandwiched between the Empire and the Nazis. And initially, it looked promising. Sources call it one of the most democratic governments in Europe, progressive constitution, civil rights.
But it was plagued by problems from day one.
Absolutely plagued. Economic chaos from the war, social unrest, political extremism on both left and right, and then the Treaty of Versailles hanging over everything.
Reparations, the war guilt clause.
The territorial losses.
Exactly. The reparations burden, 132 billion gold marks, was crippling. It contributed massively to the insane hyperinflation in 1923. People's savings just vanished overnight. Imagine the bitterness.
And political instability, too. Lots of governments, coup attempts.
Constantly. The proportional representation system, while democratic, made stable majority governments really hard to form. Lots of small parties, constant coalition shuffles, assassinations. It was turmoil.
And all this, sadly, paves the way for Adolf Hitler. The chaos and resentment created fertile ground. His rise culminates in the Enabling Act of 1933. That basically let him rule by decree, sideline parliament, and the president. democracy was dead.
And Nazi Germany, 1933-1945, a totalitarian dictatorship.
Defined by its horrific anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, the systematic genocide of Europe's Jews. The Nazis immediately started embedding their ideology everywhere. Education system rewritten, teachers purged, youth groups like the BDM indoctrinating young people.
Until total defeat in World War II in 1945, the end of the Third Reich.
And Germany is occupied, divided into 4 zones: American, British, French, Soviet. Its borders are shrunk significantly, like the Oder-Neisse line in the east.
And then the Cold War kicks in, and that division becomes permanent.
Pretty much cemented by 1947. By 1949, you have 2 German states: West Germany, the Federal Republic, FRG, tied to the West and NATO, and East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, GDR, a communist state in the Soviet bloc, part of the Warsaw Pact.
And this post-war period, especially in West Germany, develops a very specific political culture, doesn't it?
Very distinct. Sources talk about this rather pacifistic defensive military culture. It's deeply shaped by the absolute catastrophe of World War II. There's this steadfast culture of wartime memory, the Erinnerungskultur.
A national grappling with the past.
Yes, a profound understanding of the costs of war and the Nazi atrocities that really shapes political decisions and public attitudes even today. There's also that complex legacy of resistance to Nazism, the idea of an other Germany, which helped West Germany rejoin the international community.
And huge population shifts after the war, too.
Massive. Millions of ethnic Germans expelled from Eastern Europe arrive. Then, from the late 50s in West Germany, the Gastarbeiter, guest workers, arrived from Southern Europe, Turkey, Yugoslavia, changing the face of society. Later, Aussiedler, ethnic Germans from Eastern Europe come too.
And East Germany.
They lost a lot of people emigrating west before the Berlin Wall went up in 1961. After that, the population kind of stagnated.
Okay, so this divided nation, until 1989-990, reunification, Teutoburg.
A truly world-changing event. Starts dramatically with the fall of the Berlin Wall, November 9th, 1989, and it culminates less than a year later, October 3rd, 1990, when the GDR officially ceases to exist and its territory joins the Federal Republic.
How did that happen so fast? Legally? Economically?
Key steps were things like the Monetary, Economic, and Social Union Treaty in May 1990. That basically brought the West German Deutschmark and West German economic laws to the east almost overnight. Then the 2+4 treaty in September, the 2 Germanys plus the US, UK, France, and USSR formally restored full German sovereignty.
Was everyone happy about it? Inside Germany?
It was complex. Unity hadn't seemed likely just months before. Public opinion was somewhat divided. Economic hopes were a big driver, but some on the West German left were wary, fearing a dominant Germany or preferring just closer ties. Chancellor Helmut Kohl really pushed it through with his 10-point plan.
And internationally.
What?
Were other countries nervous?
Oh, definitely. Significant concern. Leaders like Thatcher and Mitterrand were openly worried about a powerful, reunited Germany. Fears of reviving pan-Germanism, militarism. Andreotti in Italy famously quipped he loved Germany so much he preferred 2 of them.
So institutions like the EU were seen as a way to kind of manage this new Germany.
Yes, to embed it firmly in European structures. That was crucial for gaining acceptance.
So since 1990, it's been about inner reunification, bringing these 2 different societies together.
That's the ongoing process, yes. And it's had challenges. Economic gaps between East and West are still there, higher unemployment in the East, infrastructure differences. People had vastly different life experiences under communism versus capitalism. You get things like that nostalgia for certain aspects of GDR life.
And politically. Still stable, but changing.
It's a stable federal democracy for sure, but you see more party fragmentation. The Greens, the liberal FDP, the Left Party, and more recently the rise of the right-wing populist AfD, which is notably strong in some eastern states.
But that culture of memory still holds strong against extremes.
It's a powerful force, yes, though it's constantly debated and tested. Economically, Germany pushed through major reforms like Schroeder's Agenda 2010, things like the Hartz reforms to boost competitiveness, tackle unemployment.
And today, it's a huge economic player, the Exportweltmeister.
Absolutely. A major engine of the European economy, a key political voice in the EU. That Franco-German partnership is still vital. It champions multilateralism, international law, human rights globally.
But maybe a reluctant leader sometimes. Because of that history.
That culture of restraint is still visible. Germany takes on more international security responsibility than it used to, but often cautiously. It's a major provider of development aid, though.
And facing big modern challenges like demographics.
Yeah, low birth rates, an aging population. Plus, it's clearly become a country of immigration, dealing with integrating refugees and other migrants, navigating multiculturalism, debates about identity, all while trying to uphold that welcoming aspect tied to its memory culture.
And environment. The Energiewende.
Big focus. Germany's been a leader in pushing for renewable energy. They face climate change, impacts floods, heat waves, and tackle biodiversity loss, air quality issues. It's a major ongoing effort. And society keeps evolving. You see things like the recent cannabis legalization. Small example, but shows change continues.
So if we pull back and look at the whole sweep, these historical threads are clearly visible today, aren't they? That federal structure.
Absolutely echoes centuries of regionalism, going right back to the HRE.
Economic strength.
Inks back to guilds, the Hanseatic League, that Industrial Revolution, innovation.
Its central location.
Still forces a complex balancing act in foreign policy.
And maybe most importantly, that Erinnerungskultur, the culture of remembrance.
It's fundamental. That deep grappling with the Nazi past, the Holocaust, it shapes Germany's sense of responsibility in a way that's quite unique.
But there are huge breaks with the past too, right?
Yeah,
Discontinuities.
definitely. The shift from a history often marked by militarism to decades of pacifism now being resought again, cautiously. From authoritarian traditions to a really stable democracy, learning lessons from Weimar and the Third Reich, from an older idea of ethnic homogeneity to a much more diverse multicultural society.
And maybe the biggest leap, pooling sovereignty in the EU.
A massive step, directly informed by the disasters of aggressive nationalism in the past.
So these specific legacies, they're not just history, they're active forces.
Completely. The memory of WWII and the Holocaust underpins the commitment to human rights, democracy, reconciliation with neighbors like France, Poland, and with Israel. The experience of division and reunification shapes Germany's commitment to European unity, but also highlights those internal economic and social gaps.
Economic success brings leadership expectations, even if reluctant. And things like the Energiewende show that drive for innovation combined with perhaps a modern ethical commitment arising from reflecting on past industrial damage.
It's just an incredible story of fragmentation, conflict, resilience, power, and profound transformation.
Absolutely. And understanding that journey is just essential if you want to understand Germany today, its identity, its challenges, and its really significant role in Europe and the world.
It really is.